Welcome back to another episode of the Cosmic Business Breakthrough. Today, I have an amazing guest with me, and Novalee Wilder is a professional numerologist, a mentor, and a writer who helps people change their name and, in turn, their life. She's also works with the naming of any and all things from babies to businesses, and I know you work with a lot of women in business. And I'm really excited today to talk with you about exploring this synergy between astrology and numerology, because I've noticed this in the resources that you have that are going to help people understand more about their path in business and in life. And I'm really excited to talk more about this idea of name change and how that can also contribute to, I guess, reforming us in business and in life as well. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very excited. And I like this focus on like the business aspect of our numbers and our names.
Brilliant. So I'd love for you to tell us a bit about your background, how you got into numerology in the first place, and even a bit of how you use it in your own business.
Yes. So I'm originally from Denmark, and I always wanted to be an actor, which is what I became. You know, I studied and I worked. And at some point, I had this like, you know, sometimes in hindsight, we can see it where I was like, I need to get out of here. It's like, I need to get out of Denmark. And I need to, both I wanted to study more intensely, and something in me, this was a couple of years after my mom passed, where I suddenly had this feeling of like, I'm not so tied to one place anymore. I feel like when you have family, or close family, whether they are really loving relationships or maybe more dysfunctional ones, you can feel very tied to a specific place and energy. And I felt like I was ready to do something different. So I signed up for an acting course in New York, and I moved to New York, which was really big. You know, I've traveled around, but I've never moved continents before. And so it was culture and language and energy and a really great acting school. And then after like 6 months, where I think my teachers were like very excited for me, and I was like, yeah, I'm doing good work here, but I was like, I am having some of the same damn problems that I had or have had before, and I've thrown therapy and energy work and what have you at them, and now I'm here again. And so I was introduced to numerology, and I had a name change session because I'm a little bit, you know, go big or go home with things. I'm like, if you don't know if it works until you do it, you know, so sometimes you just have to jump. I'm also a Leo and an Aries moon, you know, there's some fire in me that says, I mean, if you don't jump, why are we standing here talking about it? Like, you know. So I jumped. I had a name change session with a numerologist, which was this equally parts freeing and very painful experience because there was nowhere to hide. And numerology is a very honest way of looking, very honest and very practical. While you can, of course, in all readings, kind of like focus on the good and the light and the positive and the gifts, you know, getting your numeroscope read really reveals some of the inner workings and the issues. So I had the name change session, and my numerologist was like, we have to let go of all of it. Like, you cannot keep any of your names. You can't keep your first name. You can't keep your middle name. You can't keep your last name. And she was like, I mean, we can try to spell it differently. But again, I was like, well, I mean, if you are telling me that I should throw it all away, then I'm going to throw it all away and see what happens next. It maybe was also a little bit easier because I had been in New York for like 6 months. So like telling my friends, hey, I want to be called something different, they were like, okay, cool. Like, that's fine. And I didn't come like back home fully until like 2 years later. And by then it was so ingrained, this new name and this new energy in me. So when people were like, oh, I don't remember, or what is it again? Or like if they made a mistake, I was a little bit like, you've had 2 years. Like, it is ingrained in me.
Yeah.
And from the change, so many things changed. Like my relationship to my body and my sexuality and my sensuality and my creativity, and my relationship to my stories about love and relationship and men and how I fit into that. And also like love as the force it is in our life, and my own heart, and like a shit ton of stuff changed.
Yeah.
Like every single aspect of my life. And there was also some things where I was just really faced with the lies I told myself. And these are like the stories and habits that we think, oh, this is who I am. And a name change definitely says, no. This was your old name or an old filter or an old story. This is no longer true. So now you're just trying to like see the world through this filter, but it's no longer playing out. It's no longer possible. It doesn't fit anymore. Like you keep trying to take on like put on clothes that are like too small and being like, oh, it fits. No, it doesn't. Like, let's stop lying.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's cool, but like, how does it work? And so this is the long version of the story. I was like, I have to study it. So I found, yes, I read some books, but I found my first teacher and took my first like full on, becoming a numerologist course. And I found that, which I think many people do when they finally find their tool, it opened up so much for me too, where I was like, oh, apparently I'm good at this. Like these numbers, they speak to me, like I can read it once and I'm like, I know this stuff. And I did have that feeling of like maybe recollection, or, I never listened back to the recordings of our classes, or I never had to refer very much to extra papers. It just kind of like came online for me. That doesn't mean that I didn't like study or that I don't keep studying, because there are always new aspects and facets. But I was like, oh, this is not hard, which is also an interesting feeling to have about your business, because in the end it became my business. I got very lucky with my name change. My boyfriend won the green card lottery and we got married, and we decided to live and work in the US, which is also, a very lucky thing, which is something that can also lie in a name. Yeah. And I decided that if I was moving to the US and if I was doing this numerology thing, then it couldn't fail. I was like, nothing wrong with it. But I have worked in small bakeries and small shops, and I've done all the entry-level jobs to sustain the acting journey. And I am done with that. Yeah. And sometimes you can make that decision. So I was just like, this numerology journey, moving to the US, this is what I'm doing. So I went pro from like day one. And I really recommend everyone just to go pro. Just decide that this is going to work out. It's going to go. The whole idea that it can fail, like that is not. I mean, you are going to fail once in a while, but the whole journey. I mean, as long as you don't stop, then it will open for you. And then that whole overnight success. They can't see the work, but like it's going to happen for you. Yeah, it's going to happen. People are going to pop into your inbox on Instagram and be like, hey, do you want to come on my podcast?
Yes.
and tell about these things. And I'm like, yes. So yeah, it was through my own name change and kind of getting fed up with my own bullshit, what I really recommend if you want to make big change in your life. Getting really fed up with your own bullshit is usually where the real growth happens. Not just like, oh, I should do something. No. Yeah. And then, I worked with a lot of clients and kind of developed more and more different sessions. And, each client is different. And, they teach me just as much as I like reveal or show to them about how the numbers work specifically. Yeah. For a person of this gender and this skin color who grew up in this area. Like, there's so many aspects to not just the numbers, but how they play out in a certain person's life. Yeah, and I mean, then it just expanded. I got offered a book deal, and talking about luck. I'm not saying that I didn't work for it, but again, sometimes when we decide we can't fail, universe goes like, well, I guess I gotta give her something to do then. If she decides to not fail in this direction, she must do something. So I wrote my first book, and I just finished my second book that comes out in the end of this year. But that was that's my numerology journey. Yeah. And it was maybe also one of the things in my life, apart from acting, where I was like, oh, I don't get tired of this. That's interesting. I'm not getting tired of this. Where with other things, I might have tried them out and been like, oh, well, I should get a real job and I should do a real thing and I should do this, that, and the other. But numerology and acting are apparently like my two loves, the things that keep making sense to me.
There you go. I love that. I love that you found your thing relatively early in life, and that you get that, like, I understand that feeling of like, oh yeah, I know this. Like like it's like remembering it rather than learning it for the first time. It's like you're remembering it.
Yes.
And so that's why it kind of sticks in your mind so much easier.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, if it's the right tool, then it does that. Like it opens up your own intuitive aspects and channels and gifts.
Yeah, absolutely. So you work with, this is something that I brought up before we started recording, was that your style of numerology is what wasn't one that I was familiar with until, this week when I was investigating the type of numerology that you do. And that is, the numerology that I knew of, as a teenager and, that I've worked with before is what's known as Pythagorean numerology, which is a different form to what you use, which is Chaldean numerology. Yes. Is that how you say it?
Yes. Yes, that's right.
So can you just explain a little bit about that and the kind of, and why you use that particular version, and maybe a little bit about what the difference is? Because people might be like, oh, well, I thought my number was this and now my number is this. Because that's what I noticed. I was like, oh, I thought I was this. Yeah. Yes.
Well, first of all, like whatever resonates and whatever makes you feel seen is the right system and tool for you. And also a true reader or user of any system will tap into something universal. So even someone who, I could get a reading from an astrologer that uses whatever system, and I could get a reading from an astrologer that uses the same system, but they could be wildly different readings depending on how tapped in the reader is, and of course like how they choose to, and the empathy they have, and how good they feel that day. And so I just want to like preface this so no one feels like they're in the wrong. And I use Chaldean Numerology, which is the most prevalent form of numerology in Denmark. So weirdly enough, numerology has traveled over the globe, and some forms of numerology had more followers in certain parts of the world, and more books were written and translated of certain systems. And some of the, I mean, this is not to shame the Pythagorean system, but I do think that it is very simple and very easy to convey. And you could probably, from reading a few books, get a pretty good grasp of most of the system. Of course, it takes time to master and do calculations over and over again. And having studied with multiple teachers of Chaldean numerology, I really understand why maybe there are fewer Chaldean books on numerology. And maybe this is a system that is a little more advanced and a little more complex and a little bit maybe maybe more likened to something like astrology, where it's not just that someone has, like I was listening to your podcast about having your episode on having Venus in Virgo. But it's not just having Venus in Virgo. It's like, where is your sun and where is all the other things, and like
where are all the other
comprehensive understanding, where you can't just go like, oh, I'm a 7 in the system and so that's all I am. Or like simplified, like, oh, my name is Sophia and it adds up to this vibration. So I don't have to compare or combine any things or make any extra calculations. That is just like
that's
simple and nice and easy. And also, when we look at the alphabet, whatever alphabet you use, the Pythagorean system just says A is 1, B is 2. It's just like this one alphabet system and this one number system. We're going to smack them together and they're just going to fit. And the Chaldean system is a more like, well, yes, A is 1, but B is not 2. And like it's the system of how the numbers correspond to the letters, that's different. So how you read name vibrations are different. And when you look at someone's birthday in the Chaldean system, we start with the day. So I'm born on the 28th. 2 plus 8 is 10.
Me too.
We're 2 ones here.
There
1
you
plus
go.
0 is 1. Yes, so we start with the day, where the Pythagorean system adds all the numbers in your birthday together. Where in the Chaldean system, we're like the day and the year and the sun sign.
Yeah,
so while we do look, of course we do look. I mean, if someone is born on, 7/7, 19 something, that also adds up to 7. I do notice that there's a lot of 7 energy showing up there. But I'm more interested in the fact that they would, maybe be a Cancer if they're born in the beginning of July. So like I would overlap that too.
Okay, right. So you're not really using the month. You're using, instead of the month, you're using their star sign, their sun sign.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Because you can't ignore it. It's like astrology. You can't ignore astrology. That's my experience. You can't ignore it. And I can also tell, for example, like if I have someone, like I'm a 1 and a Leo, and the number 1 is connected to Leo. So I got a lot of Leo energy or 1 energy showing up in my birthday. And then, which is very often going to happen. I don't think I've ever had a client where their astrology chart didn't like pretty much overlap with certain parts of their numbers there, because I'm my yearly number, or if you add the numbers of the year I was born, they add up to 6, which is Venus and care and home and family and creativity, but it's also Cancer energy, and my rising sign is Cancer. So I was like, like some of these things overlap. And also kind of like an astrology where I think there's like a higher ruler sometimes for the signs. Sometimes when I talk, that's why sometimes if you listen to me talk about how they connect, you're going to be like, oh, but that number you didn't say that the last time. But more than one number or more than one ruler can influence a number. So that's sometimes also the intuitive reading where you sit with someone, you go like, I think we are going to talk a lot about 7 energy and Neptune here. Even though like maybe it only shows up once or twice, but you can feel that like that aspect is, again, like every system works for the people it really works for. And then there's the intuitive aspect where you go, this is where the gold is. This is where I'm going to start to dig. And this is what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so when you're looking at, from this Chaldean perspective, you're looking at your day number, which is your either if you've got a single digit day number, that's easy, or if you've got a double digit number, you're adding them together. Yeah,
you need to find the digit sum. You can't be a 28.
No, it can't be a 28.
You have to be
2 plus 8,
number. Yes.
1.
Yes.
So you take that number, you take your sun sign, and then you look at the number of the year added up together, right?
Yes.
So, for me, I'll say my year. I was born in 1983. So that number added up together from my calculation is 3.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that then becomes like, it's like I can't remember. I think I got the double digit first before I added that up. But so then your base numbers are what you call them are 1,
and 3.
Your day number, and then your year number is your other base number, and then your sun sign. And that's for your birth date. And then obviously you also look at your name number and you calculate that in a different way using
and that's the thing is kind of like with everything else, like you start with the biggest pieces of the puzzle. And so no matter what your name is, the most important thing to always know is your base numbers. And if the older texts you read of Chaldean numerology, and I think this is true for some of Pythagorean numerology as well, like some of the terms we use today didn't exist 100 years ago. or 3,000 years ago. I don't know if people were talking about life path numbers then. Maybe they were just talking about numbers, because when you read old Chaldean books, you realize they don't preface them with anything. They're just like, you're a one, you're a one, you're a one, you're a one. They don't even use like base or root or anything like that.
Base, okay, right.
Yeah, so this is just like, also for me, I kind of want to sometimes just make it a little bit more practical. And I feel like sometimes being like, well, this is the base number, understanding that this is your core, your base, your foundation, your unchangeable parts, and the gifts and lessons of challenges of that number, they are just unchangeable. So forever, you and me are going to grow through being a one, and we're going to work out what leadership is to us, and we're going to figure out why we sometimes have issues with authorities, and we're going to work out what it is to be an outspoken person, or someone who always has an opinion or solution or a way of doing it. And like, we're going to work out what does it mean to be a leader in a female body in whatever society and culture we're growing up in. And some of it comes with certain privileges, and other things are like, I'm a bitch now, you know. Leadership looks different in different bodies, and sometimes that's also part of like the reading I have to do with people, that like some of the terms also, like one is a masculine number, so it's an energy that moves forward first. You like forward to create a solution, or start a fire, or share an idea, or cheer someone on, or believe in something. And sometimes some of these things are seen as masculine, and so we get told off that we are too loud, or, you know, like often the work is to clarify the core of the number, and then look at the trauma that is unavoidable sometimes when we have it, and like the ideas we have told ourselves about, it's a lot of energy I come here with, I better soften it or make it more palatable, and I can't be too loud or too brass, or I can't be too my way. This is the way, my way. I'm going in this direction. Come on, people. You know, I'm allowed to yell, but I'm not allowed to be angry. Anger is one of the things that fuel many of the leadership numbers. So, you know, going all into that. Yes. But
that's so, I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it? How this is why I wanted to bring you on the show, because I think so much of what we learn through these different ways of understanding ourselves, you know, whatever resonates with you, but you can take parts of it all to kind of connect the dots. Like, I think understanding that about me, not, you know, knowing that I have that base number 1, even though I don't have necessarily any strong Leo or Aries, I would also associate the 1 with the Aries energy. But like, that was how I kind of translated it in my mind, but in my astrology mind.
Well, the fire is there.
It's the fire, but
you can also just reduce it to the element, and then whatever one sparks for you first. I mean, the beginning of thing is very Aries, so in that way,
it's also the beginning sign. It's also ruled by the sun, so it has that same, you know, that Leo sun energy as well.
Yes.
But it's just interesting that in my chart I don't have that. You know, like, you've got the Leo sun, you've also got an Aries moon, but I don't have that. But I do have aspects between the planets that give that kind of, that fieriness, that kind of, the, you know, the activation of Mars and that kind of thing that I can see. But then knowing then more through the numerology really helps me to understand that part of myself that might not be so obvious in the astrology chart.
Yes.
Like, it's just a beautiful kind of synergy.
I mean, it's another way in, and I'm like, any way that works, you know, and the better we get at whatever we get good at, the more we realize that any way can actually be in, that, like, it doesn't matter from where you start in the maze or on the map, like the core is the same.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about names, because I know you love talking about names, but also this is fascinating to me as somebody who has changed her name. I'm on my 3rd name of this lifetime. As in
Love it.
last
Very
name.
one, by the way. Very one. Like, let's get something new in here.
Yes. Let's bring in the new stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I haven't changed my first name. I've always been a Sophia, but my last name has changed 3 times.
Yes.
So I was born with a name, I got married, I changed my name, and then I got divorced and I changed my name by choice. And I'm remarried now, but I'm not taking my husband's name. And what I'm interested in is, because we had a chat offline before we were recording, about how choosing your name can bring in this whole different kind of element, especially I suppose if you're in business. Like you can choose a business name, but also choosing your own name can bring you into a new energy. So can you just explain a little bit more about how the name numerology works?
How it works. So in numerology, every letter corresponds to a number. So when we look at the letters in any name, anything that is named, we could also do it for specific words, but they would have to be assigned to an entity to really matter to us.
Yes, they have to have an energy.
Some people are like, "Oh, the energy behind this word," and I'm like, unless we're naming something with that word, it's less interesting to me. So we come up with a name vibration, like the energy of each name, based on the value that comes out from adding all the letters together or the numbers together. And so we look at these name vibrations. They fit into a numeroscope, which is not the same as a horoscope, but it is kind of like a chart that your numerologist will do. And they will maybe look at your past numeroscope. So, if one has changed their name more than once, I would definitely look at, okay, well, where did you start out? Your birth numeroscope is always going to tell me something about what was needed in your family, because it's always going to fit with your experience of growing up in that family. And since the name was chosen by your parents, it's very often that parents pass on not just the energy of the last name, but they might pick other name vibrations that they know. So, Sophia, the vibration of Sophia is 25/7. So we say the double digit number, and then we say the digit sum. And someone in your family, maybe your mom, maybe your dad, could have carried that vibration just in a different name. And so when they saw Sophia, something in them were like, yes, I know this, I'm passing it on. Yeah. And so gifts can be passed on. There are definitely a lot of naming gifts where you can also kind of see in families where, if you have like a story where your dad or your mom fought for a name, or they were like, this is it, this has to be in my child's name. And they often fight for the gifts, which is beautiful. And then also sometimes we see some of those things where we're like, why is no one letting this energy die? Like, this is just not helpful for anyone, doesn't fit anyone. But you carry around like a stone in your shoe, where you're so used to the stone in your shoe. And sometimes the stone in the shoe are like really major, like victim patterns or loss patterns or anger issues, like, or addiction, because they also travel through families and they are tied up sometimes in some of these energies. And so we can read a person's energies through their name. And since names can be changed, we can see how things evolve. And usually people lighten their name. So they might, in a name change, if they do it by themselves and they don't work with the numerologist, they might amplify certain aspects where they kind of know it. So naming yourself is kind of like naming a child, where it's going to feel good and it's going to feel like home. You're going to be like, yes, like this vibration. So often what I see in numeroscopes is that like the things just change position. So, like you
because it feels comfortable.
Feels comfortable.
So people choose the same vibration again.
Yeah. And, I always say, if you're getting married and if you're contemplating taking his name, if it feels expansion and you feel happy, expansiveness. That's how you should feel. Like you should feel expansive. Like the name feels like your body is opening and there is more space. It should be a physical experience, not just in your head, because your head comes up with stories about being easier to be around and following tradition and not making a fuss and what have you.
Oh,
But your body is
yes.
not really so much into that. So your
That's
body
right.
says yes, it's a yes. And I see that when that happens, if people take on, like I had a reading many years ago, where I actually had a reading with the husband, and then he was like, "Oh, can you quickly look at her?" And I looked at her maiden name and her married name, and I think the only thing I told her was like, "Your life got so much easier, didn't it? Didn't you got married and your life just got so much easier because of the life
Yeah.
theme in her numeroscope had
Wow.
changed between like a very heavy, very struggle, very Sisyphus, like, oh my God, we're just
Yeah.
pushing boulders up hills and that's all we do, to a
Yeah.
very light, very easy, very I'm being helped energy. And she was like, yeah, I don't know. People are so nice now. And I was like, yeah, not that, not that there are no assholes, but people are so nice
Yeah.
now. And that can sometimes also happen, you know, in name changes. So just
Mm.
for, this is my PSA for anyone listening. If it doesn't feel like a full body yes, we're not changing our name.
Right.
Because
Okay.
what can happen when you take his name is that you amplify some aspect of your energies that you don't want. And maybe
Mm.
the balance of energy tips over, that maybe he was managing just fine with whatever the name vibration
Mm.
was, but you carrying it too amplifies the energy. So it's like another fire is being
Yes.
started maybe, and now there's too much smoke in the room, and maybe that relationship can't take that much smoke.
Mm.
That is the image you're getting today
Yeah.
on that. Yeah.
Interesting. What about, I mean, I suppose it's still going to change your name vibration, but I'm just thinking about, my husband is Colombian. He's from a South
Mm.
American country. And in South
Yes.
America, they keep both of
Yes.
their parents' names. They
Which is
don't take their
interesting, right?
father's name.
Like it's always
Yes.
interesting to experience a culture that has done something with the naming tradition that either keeps
Mm.
it in status quo or
Mm.
opens it in some way. Like
Mm.
in lots of countries, you can't actually change your name. Like you
Yeah.
actually can't. In
Yes.
some countries, you can only do it if it follows certain rules. Like if you're in Iceland or the
Mm.
Faroe Island, um, then it has to follow, like you have to be named Dottir. Like if you're the daughter of someone, like you have to add
Yes, I
Dottir
know.
to your
Yeah.
last name. And so it's like,
Yeah.
you better be, better have a good, mom better have a good first name. Because we can't really do so much here. We have to
But that's
name
interesting. So
you.
they take the mother's name.
Yeah, they can. Then like the only things that we can change there is they can either take be like Sophia's daughter, or
Mm.
like if it was
Wow.
Adam's son or Adam's
Yeah.
daughter. So like as a numerologist with certain cultures, I'm like, okay, I have a restriction
That's,
here. What can I do
yeah,
about this? I mean,
with
in
that.
Norway, you can only change your name every 10 years. That's just a rule.
Right.
So if you file for something with a name change, it doesn't matter if you get divorced or something else. They're not gonna like process that name
You
change
can't
until
change it.
10 years later. So also as a numerologist,
Right.
we're very careful with Norwegian clients.
Mm.
Because we're like, I can't fuck this
Yeah.
up. Not that I do that, but like we're just like, okay, we're just crossing our T's and dotting our I's here
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah. You got to
there's a
keep this
little.
name for 10 years.
Yeah. And others, like, I
Yeah.
mean, in Denmark, it's an online thing and you have your answer within 24 to 48 hours. And then the whole system is digital. So it's changed absolutely
Yes.
everywhere with a click of a button. So
Oh, wow.
it's a very,
That's easy.
very easy, probably also
Yeah.
why Chaldean Numerology is so popular in Denmark is because you can use it very quickly. You
Mm.
don't have to like go through the courts or
Right.
do a lot of stamps. It's not very expensive. So yeah, there's also that aspect of name change in different cultures and different countries. And if
Yeah.
a
So you've got to
government
be
has made it
aware if you're
easy, yeah,
going
yeah,
if you're going to change your name, you've got to be aware of, what's required to do that. I
yeah,
mean, I'm like you, I'm pretty lucky in Australia that it's not too difficult to
yeah,
change a
it's not
name.
too hard.
And it's just, a bit of paperwork. But yeah, for some people it can be very difficult. And I noticed because I have Greek heritage as well. So when I am in Greece and I had a Greek bank account, I couldn't have the bank account in. I couldn't use my name. I had to use my father's name. Like as
Oh,
in
wow. Yeah.
my father's not at all Greek, right? My mother's side is Greek, but I couldn't use my middle name. I had to use his name as my middle name. So and in
That is so
Greece, like
strange.
there's
Yeah.
that's the patriarchal
Yeah, 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 yeah.
tradition. So
Yeah.
like you say, like daughter of this, you have to use your father's name so they know who you are, right? Or who you
Yes.
are in the,
Yes.
and that's why I was so intrigued by the South American system of using both last names, because then you can kind of identify how the families came together and where you came from, but in a different, way that feels a little bit more, less patriarchal, I
Yeah, I mean, it
suppose.
feels lovely in certain ways, but it is also
Mm,
harder in many Latin
but it's
American
harder.
countries to change your
Yes.
name, and they really want that two
Yes.
last name thing. They are
They
really
really want
not
that. And that,
happy.
that
They're
gives
not really
you,
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
and even if it's two last
Mm,
names that are not Spanish sounding, they're still like, well, I mean, you
yes.
gotta have two. What do you want me to do with this
You got to
empty
have two.
space on this form? Like, for me to have to put
But then
something there.
that
So,
becomes
I
that
also
becomes
had,
really confusing here,
yeah,
because if we have, like, my husband has two last names, nobody understands the concept of two last names here. So they just put his last name, like his
yeah, yeah,
final name, and his first last name becomes his middle name.
yeah.
So you kind of, in Australia, you've got to hyphenate your name, otherwise the
Yeah.
names get
Well, I
lost.
mean,
So anyway,
the
that's
good thing here, I just want to say for anyone listening, is that like
yeah.
hyphenating a name doesn't change the energy. It still
Okay.
stays as two names.
That's good
So,
to know.
like
That's
if
good
you
to know.
wanted to look at his names and the name energy, just ignore that hyphen. Like, don't even
Yeah.
plot it into a
Yeah.
calculator or whatever, because hyphens,
Yeah.
just like dots and accents, they don't
They
matter
don't
so
count.
much. Yes.
Okay. Good to know.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, we got a little sidetracked on that whole debate, but I think it's really interesting to just think about, like, because we kind of sit in a little bubble a bit sometimes, and we don't consider how it works for other people in other places, other parts of
It
the
is a
world, and
thing
that's
that
really
I often share with people. I'm like, remember, if I'm having a client who normally speaks a different language, I'm like, think about how this is going to show up in a passport. If
yes,
young people, teenagers, also children, I'm like, it is lovely to use some of the letters that are only in the Danish language. But how are you interested in giving your kid a name that works more internationally? Because then there are certain names that are
yeah,
just off the table, or that the spelling is going to be weird. I also really recommend, whatever you change your name to, Google it. Google it.
Google
Google
it.
it. Whether it's a business name or your own name, it's really good to know if you share it with someone or a different business, or in this day and age of technology and the internet, it's really good to own your name in that way, like
Yeah,
if possible. I was very excited that no one was named Novalee Wilder. I was like, taking it. It is not mine.
yes,
So like there was also some claiming that can happen there, and I don't know if we talked about it yet, but like we all just really also have stories about our name, and maybe sharing it with others, or maybe you're named after someone in your family that no one likes, or maybe you're
yeah,
like maybe there are also some naming stories that, with a name change or like some rewriting of your own story, which you're allowed to do, like it could feel better. It could feel better.
yeah, yeah. And I think we were talking offline about that kind of hesitation around changing your name because you've got the story from your parents or your family that that name has so much meaning or
Yeah.
significance, and it feels really difficult to break away from that sometimes and claim your own different story too.
Yes.
So
And sometimes
yeah,
we
maybe
have to
talk a
pick
little
up
bit.
if we're picking up on a story that they have going on, and not a story that's actually true for us. So any action you
Yes.
take can be taken as a rejection by someone else. Even actions you take in love can be taken by someone else as a rejection. I have seen this
Yeah.
with people who have changed maybe the spelling of a last name, one letter. No one would notice. No one would care. No one has noticed, except for their parents who were like, oh my God, you are rejecting us. You do not want to be part of this family anymore. I cannot, but the whole conniption and the, fake fainting and the like gossip through the ranks and uncles and aunts being pulled in. And I was just like, a name change is not a rejection of your parents or your heritage or the love and care that they have for you.
Yeah.
And if they need to have this little drama play out, then let them have that little drama play out. And if they need to bring it up at every single family get together, I promise you, if it wasn't that, it would be someone else or something else they would come up with. Because some people just love a little drama. And so sometimes that's also like just looking at your family and going like, am I afraid of this? Because I know that my family loves drama and I am going to feed them a lovely little thing they can gnaw on for years. Well, I am okay with that. Just saying this is one fire sign to the world. It is okay if they want the drama and that's fine.
That's fine.
I see different things in my clients. Sometimes people are like, oh, I have to be named something very close, or, like I have to combine my old name with something new in a way where they can still call me that, because I just I can't take the fight. And I'm always like, ooh, that's an interesting, deep story. Your name change is going to release it. Maybe on the other side, you're going to find that this whole fear is just gone.
That's right.
And then you're going to find that it's not such a big deal if you don't get so impacted by it. And then, of course, I also have clients who are like, who could have a problem? Why would anyone ever have a problem with what I do? Where I'm like, ooh, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
More of that into the world. But people are going to react to you, and it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission sometimes. Not that you have to ask for forgiveness, but I'm like, do the thing and then show them the thing. It's kind of like a haircut. If you start telling your friends or your family, I'm thinking of changing my hair, thinking of cutting it, thinking of coloring it, what they hear is, give me input. Give me input on this information I'm telling you.
And so people don't like change.
No.
People feel uncomfortable with that.
If it's like, are you allowed to change? Are you allowed to change? Are we allowed to do this? What does the world come to?
It brings up their own story as well. When you show that you want to change.
Yeah, if us talking about this like brings up stuff for you, I have a podcast episode all about what to do when someone you love changes their name, which is like a podcast episode that I recorded for the loved ones of my clients, because I was like, if you have problems with change and transformation, then someone doing a big thing is going to trigger a bunch of stuff. And maybe also depending on your age, you could also have that thing of like, oh, maybe it's only for the young, where you could be like, oh, I'm too old to make major changes in my life. And here is someone showing me that it's doable. And, I have clients in their 60s and 70s and 80s, and they're very, like, oh, I've never done anything for myself, and this is like my final chapter, and I'm going to do all the things that I've held back on. And I wish that's also what people say, I wish I had done this 50 years ago or something. So I'm also just saying that, like, permission granted for anyone listening or watching this, like, you're allowed to change. You have permission. I grant you the permission to change whatever it is that you feel like you want to change, especially if it feels like a free fall, a jump off a cliff, a big thing, something that someone is going to create some drama and some gossip from. That it's probably a thing you need to be doing. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Go for it. But go for it. Go and listen to that episode if you need some support around
a little validation,
helping your loved ones.
But also just follow it. Adjust. Follow the fear all the way to the door. Be like, what are the worst thing they're going to do? Call me my old name in like a with like this air of like, I can't be bothered. Okay, I'll survive. the rest of the world is going to call me by my new name.
Yeah, that's true. So just to give us a little bit of, I guess, insight into what
Yes.
can happen if you change your name and you are able to shift vibration. Can you tell us how you work with people in that, in kind of maybe especially in a business sense? Like what would you be looking for maybe to change a name for more success in business?
Yeah. So I also do name changes and naming for businesses. So, picking dates, formation dates, and names for
Yes.
businesses. But I always say it starts with you. The business is a tool, you're the motor, or like the energy source. So even if it's its own
Yes.
entity, it's an LLC in the US, or, whatever form it takes in your country where it becomes its own entity, and even if it gets to like having a board of directors really being a big thing. And it also goes, not that I do it a lot, but like if you ever want to speculate with stocks and stuff like that, I do look at businesses, but I look at the people who run them, because it's their personal energies that are going to impact what's going on. It's their personal yearly cycles that are going to show up there. It's you don't look at the Republican Party if you want to know if it's going to win the next election. You look at the person running for office. And so with people, I really recommend that we work on your personal name change first. And a name change, as I do it, is that we're going to find names and energies that support you as much as possible. So we're going to look at your base numbers, and we're going to see what they're here to do in the world. And then we're going to look at what in your current numeroscope is kind of like hindering that. So maybe you don't see yourself clearly. Maybe the world doesn't see you clearly. That's the filter image. It makes a lot of sense to us. We understand how filters change reality, sometimes very drastically, whether or not you're on one side of the camera or another. And so a name change is how I pick the name vibrations. You pick the names. I don't pick the names. I just pick the name vibrations. And you're going to be more you, which is such a cliche thing to say. But a name change is going to make you more you. It's going to give you more access to the energy and the energy centers you already have in your body. And each base number is also connected to a specific chakra. So for example, if you are a 1, your heart chakra, or like your sensual and sexual chakra, is the most important chakra to connect to, keep clean, and listen to as a 1. All the other centers are of course in play, but usually when 1s get stuck, we get stuck down in the, is it fun? And do I really want to create this? What am I doing? What am I doing? And does it feel good down there? Is there traction in it? Is there fire underneath the logs? Do I burn? And do I want to eat it, taste it, sleep in it, roll around in it? Kind of it's a very physical, usually, experience for a 1. And different centers for different base numbers. It would be too much to get into here, but the resource and my book goes into that. And so we align these things. You go through a name change, and that is usually the first year after a name change is where we unravel the old. So usually that first year is very things coming up to get released. We literally call it the release, the first 12 months. I call it the release. You could call it the detox, the untangling, whatever feels good. And it's going to happen no matter what. You can't kind of do more homework than others on that. And it usually means that a lot of that stuff where oh, I thought I was unlovable, the release shows you, well, you're very loved. Okay. What would it be to be in the world and be loved? What would that do to you? Or you could work on your self-confidence, your acceptance of yourself. Maybe your goals and values get more embodied. Maybe certain things get moved. I also, before I changed my name, I think I was very single-minded in things. So a lot of things I didn't even give them a chance. And I found it very painful to realize that so many of my, I mean, it was painful to wake up and realize that so many of my relationships were one-sided, which I think is a maybe very Leo and one energy, is that like you bring so much fire to the damn table that other people don't need to bring a lot. Not to be a whole like episode on one energy, but like we all bring something to the table, and sometimes we bring so much of it that no one else brings anything. And sometimes like the balance in your relationships are going to get like recalibrated. And maybe if you stop giving, people might have little drama with that. They're going to be all like, what is up with you? New name and now this
so
shit.
Interesting, isn't it? It's interesting.
So that can recalibrate. So like that's what I say usually for people who come for a business session. They're like, okay, I want to change the name of my business. I'm like, great. You want to start with a personal name change? I mean, we can do the other. But like also, you know, maybe new gifts are going to come online, or like interests, and like what always comes more through a name change is a more like balanced sense of your own spirituality. Because you can't be fully connected without also connecting upwards and inwards and into whatever gifts. And, you know, like I remember having a reading before I changed my name where this man told me, he was like, you know, you do have some clairvoyant gifts. And I was like, really? What?
Yeah.
Me? And then after my name change, I had this thing where I was standing in front of a friend and I was like, did your grandmother pass away? And she was like, what? Yeah. I mean, on your mom's side? And she was like, yeah, why are we talking about this now? I was like, she's right here. And I am not normally, by the way, a channel for any and all things. But one of the things, and I have also maybe on purpose and my own fears, I was like, that's really interesting. I think I'm going to keep to the numbers. I don't think I'm going to be... She was really nice, the grandmother. It was really lovely. There was a lot of love coming through. I was like, I understand, right? Like mediumship must be a very rewarding, trait or like field. But I was like, whoo. And so I would also say maybe sometimes if you get a reading and someone reads you, whether it's astrology or palmistry or whatever, some of the gifts they talk about can be kind of dormant. Like they can come later in life, they can come through a name change, they can come through a trauma. But like sometimes I think I have discounted certain things I was told in readings because I was just not there yet, or I didn't have like the name set up that would support that. And that's also like a name change. There is not just one new numeroscope. Based on people's wishes and goals, we might go in a different direction. And when we name businesses, your number one thing for a business is it needs to make money. If it doesn't make money, I'm not sure it's a business.
Yes.
Sometimes I have to remind myself that too. If it doesn't make money, then it's a hobby or a fun thing to do, or maybe a connection point for you. Maybe it's a playground. But if it doesn't make money, then it's not really a business. So when I look at businesses, I look at them more as tools. They don't really have karmic journeys or spiritual destinies or weird connections to, you know, they don't have soulmates or twin flames or anything like that. Businesses are just businesses. So it has to fit your base number. You should have a tool that fits your hand. And then it should be able to make money. Now, what you do with the tool, like, you know, I have done that, given people wonderful, you know, formation dates and numeroscopes for their new business. And then they're like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to take another course. And I'm like, okay. It's ready when you are. You know, I usually do that very open-ended. I also really recommend to really question when you enter into business. If you're going to use your own name, maybe that's going to be more known than your business name. Then just, you know, we can still have a business name, but then maybe we pick something more general. So it's more an umbrella thing that could maybe hold more things. So like Sophia does astrology is kind of limiting, but you know, Sophia Palace Limited or Sophia Palace, like something.
I have a separate business company name. Yeah, I have a separate company name, which I haven't done the numerology on.
Ooh, you should. You probably have recreated some things. Yeah. But also, I want to say, I have some people, you know, who download my resources and get very sad because they're like, oh, I have a name that's not so great, and I named my business something that's not so great, and it's all true, and everything is not so great. To which I say, wonderful that you recognize that what is here is actually true. And wonderful that you found someone who could potentially help you with changing these things. So numerology should never be something that makes you afraid or sad. It is okay, though, if it makes you evaluate and reevaluate maybe your situation. Because I feel like that's also, again, I don't think I would have become a numerologist if there wasn't the practical aspect of being able to change people's names. Because I really want people to take action. It is the only thing that has changed my life. It's the action part of things. It's all well good and to read and meditate, and those are wonderful things, but it's usually actions that really change your life. So also with naming things and we get into it like pricing and what's a price things. And people get very excited about angel numbers. Ooh, I want it to be like 333 or 777. And I'm like, okay, that's not so great in numerology actually. But if you do that, then, we have to explain it. Sometimes it's also like you can sell almost anything if you explain what it is and why you're selling it. So give me a good story about why does this really need to be priced at 777? Is it because you're a 7? Ooh. Is it because it spoke to you? Is it because it came to you in a dream? I would like to know about it. Not just because, 777, it's an angel number. I just wrote a book about angel numbers. I'm into them. But there's some, sometimes we have to be practical. There's a reason why people price the things the way they do, like on a more broad and mainstream level. There's a reason why things are $9.99 and $9.95 and stuff like that.
Yes. Is there a good number for pricing? Like, I mean,
anything with 5. Anything with 5. 5 is
anything
connected
with
to
5.
Mercury and exchange, travel, pricing things, sales. I mean, it's also, you can see it. Why are things priced just below a whole number? So things are $9.95 or $9.99 instead of just 10 or 100. Like the psychology of our brains go, ooh, it's only.
It's not the next number. Yes. Yeah. It's not. It's not $2,000. It's only $1,999.
Yeah, and it's better, I will say, because 9 is the end of things. So often when there's 9 in a price, we feel like we get all of it.
Yeah.
We feel like, if I pay $199, I get all of it. Where 200, it's a new thing, it's a new number, it's a new level, and we feel like, oh, no, wait, I need those 5 cents taken off. And the best thing is if a number can end on 5. Because that feels good to our brain. That is like the middle of things, and 5 is just, if you're going to pick an angel number for a price, I really love 555. Way more than 777. And you will see, I mean, this is a thing, like, I mean, we also do it in I teach numerology classes, but the more you get sensitive to the numbers, the more you can see why 187 is a weird price and 185 feels nicer. And if you can't, it's okay if you listen now or you watch now and you're like, man, that doesn't feel any different to me. But I would tell you that, like, if you went into a store and everything was like 153 and 187 and 22, you'd be a little like, who priced this? Like, what? This store feels a little weird.
Yeah, this feels odd.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really good to know. Like, because I'm often telling my clients, as you know, I talk about pricing a lot, but I'm often telling my clients, okay, sit with the price, because people have an idea in mind. They often want to use, like you say, the angel numbers. But I often find, I'm like, that just doesn't feel right. There's something off in that number. What is wrong with the number? And that's just a beautiful thing to just kind of go, wait a minute, there's probably a reason that number doesn't feel right. How can I make this feel more complete or more, like make it to a 9 or make it a 5?
Yeah. And I mean, I play with this in my own business. Like, if I have to create, say a higher ticket item, and I know that if I do that, I probably need to create also a payment plan. then I will sit for a little
Yes.
bit with that payment plan and be like, well, what do I want to see on my statement every month? Like, what do they want to see? Because of course, after Stripe fees and everything, I see something else. But like, what would feel good in my body to say yes to? 95 feels a lot better than 115. Of course, it's a different, number and amount, but sometimes it feels better to pay a deposit of 500 and then 95 for X amount of months than it does to pay 433 as a deposit, where your brain always goes, what is this three doing?
Is that?
And then you're paying like 115 or something a month. So
okay,
this is a thing you can play around with. I do have like a teeny tiny, this is not to like promote everything, but I do have a teeny tiny mini course called Numbers That Sell on like how to name and price things if people want like a crash
I'm
course.
excited about this. I'm
but
excited.
You can also,
Numbers that
things
sell,
that are
people.
hard
Let's
to
go
sell.
and look at it.
Yeah, things that are hard to sell. It's like, what is the blurb, or like, what is the little thing you're telling people? What is the story? And also, if the price is weird, you gotta explain the weird. It could be an opportunity to give like a little personality, infuse that in the story that because we're also all buying stories when we buy things. But you can't have it price something weird and not explain it. I'm telling you, it's going to be hard to sell. And
very
people are also going to quote it wrong. You're going to find yourself with a price you don't feel good with. You're going to have trouble saying it and remembering it, and like, don't do it to yourself.
Don't do it.
Easy numbers.
I love that. All right. This has been such an interesting conversation. I have loved every minute. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we will share all of your links in the show notes. And please, if you're listening, connect with Novalee on Instagram or wherever you like to connect. But I think Instagram is the main place.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, Instagram, and if you're like, hey, I want to know my number, so go to novaleewilder.com and, sign up for my newsletter and get that ebook. There's an ebook called...
Yes.
What is it called? The 9 base numbers? See, I even named
the base
it.
numbers. Yes.
The base numbers,
which is very helpful.
It's going to teach you about your number, and that can be a really good place to start, to be like, okay,
brilliant.
These are my gifts. I better go embrace them.